Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Maker's Workbench. I'm your host Charles, and in this video I'm going to be updating the updated version of one of my most popular videos. Last year, the Raspberry Pi Foundation announced Raspberry Pi Imager, a utility designed to simplify the process of installing operating systems onto SD cards for use in Raspberry Pis. Raspberry Pi Imager allows users to select the specific operating system they would like to install, and then the program downloads the latest version of that operating system in the background before the install begins. Now that we know how that works, let's move on. Head over to raspberrypi.org/software and download the correct version of Raspberry Pi Imager for the type of computer you're going to be using to install the Raspberry Pi OS onto the SD card. There are versions for Windows, Mac, and Linux, and there's even a version for Raspberry Pi OS itself. Additionally, you'll need a Class 10 UHS-1 microSD card that is at least 8 GB or larger. You'll also need some way to read and write to the SD card you're using, so if your computer has a built-in SD card reader, you're good to go. If not, I've left a link in the description to the one I use myself. It's great and it's worked for me for years. Once Raspberry Pi Imager has downloaded, install it as you would any other program, then insert the SD card into the reader and open Raspberry Pi Imager. When Raspberry Pi Imager opens, you're presented with two options: Choose OS and Choose SD card. Click on Choose OS and scroll down the list and select the Erase option. Then click on the Choose SD card button and select the SD card you just inserted. Once you have made your selection, click the Write button. Note that this will completely erase the SD card and format it to the FAT32 file system, so please make sure that you choose the right SD card and ensure that there is nothing on it you wish to keep before clicking Write. When the formatting process is completed, you can now choose the operating system you would like to install. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm installing the default 32-bit Raspberry Pi OS. Before moving on, we need to take a moment and use the new Advanced Settings menu of Raspberry Pi Imager to set up SSH and Wi-Fi before burning the image to the SD card. Pressing the Ctrl, Shift, and X keys at the same time will open the Advanced Settings menu. This menu is used to access a lot of settings in Raspberry Pi OS that you once had to set up manually by creating and placing various text files onto the boot directory of the Raspberry Pi OS install, or alternatively after the Raspberry Pi was already set up and running. An example of this was the Wi-Fi configuration file that you had to create, as well as a blank .ssh file that would enable Wi-Fi and SSH on the Pi's first boot. Quickly running down the menu, you can see that we are able to disable overscan, set a new host name, enable SSH, configure Wi-Fi, and even set the locale information. Additionally, you can set the Raspberry Pi Imager to remember these settings for the next image you burn, or you can just use them for this session only. I always give the Raspberry Pis that I set up a custom host name, as this helps me easily differentiate between the various Pis on my network. You can set the host name to whatever you would like it to be, but I do recommend that you keep the name under 16 characters, use lowercase, and if necessary, use underscores. As a rule of thumb, I always enable SSH on my Raspberry Pi OS installs, but I would only recommend enabling SSH if you're going to actually use it, and I would caution you to use a very secure password, as IoT devices are increasingly becoming the main target of hackers. When configuring Wi-Fi, enter your SSID and password as you normally would. As for the locale settings, just set these to whatever fits your locale. I'm on the East Coast of the US, and I set mine to America, New York, and my keyboard layout to US. If you desire, you can check the box here to disable the Pi's first run wizard. Okay, now all you have to do is check that the information you entered is correct and click the Save button. Once again, select the SD card you're going to burn to, and then you'll need to click the Write button one final time for the process to begin. This process can take anywhere from a few minutes to upwards of half an hour depending on the SD card's write speed. Once this process is completed, a prompt appears telling you that the image has been installed and it is now safe to remove the SD card from the reader. Since we're just installing the full Raspberry Pi OS and it's intended for use with a screen, you do not need to take any additional steps before you install the SD card into a Raspberry Pi. If you're wanting to run your Raspberry Pi headless, the post-image burning process is a little different, and I have a video covering that in detail, and you can find a link to that in the description below. Additionally, to gain access to the full amount of storage on the SD card, you'll need to expand the file system after booting your Pi for the first time, and as you guessed it, I also have a video showing you how to do that, and I have left a link to that in the description below as well. Before this video ends, I just want to ask that you give this video a thumbs up if you found this tutorial helpful in any way, and that you consider subscribing to the channel as well as ringing the notification bell so that you get notified when I post new content or start a live stream. Only 8% of you who watch this video are subscribed, and even less are receiving notifications when I post new content. I'm really pushing hard to grow this channel in 2021, and I'm doing this full time, at least for the time being. So knowing that you enjoy the content really helps motivate me to create new videos. And that's going to wrap up this video. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch my content, and as always, hack the world and make awesome.